Hi, this is Anne Chander from Inspiring Women Changemakers, and this is my free Zoom webinar delivered over Zoom about Zoom. Bit about me first of all. I'm the founder of Inspiring Women Changemakers, which is a global movement of people who stand up for fairness and safety for women. Being a global organisation, I've been using Zoom since 2017 for a variety of reasons. So I'd first of all like to share with you some of the things that I use it for. For one-to-one coaching, I have used Zoom to not only deliver my sessions with people all over the world, but also to record them either as an audio or as a video. Obviously getting people's permission to record first of all. The next way I have used Zoom is to deliver talks. So that includes, for example, a talk that I gave to a university in Mexico where I was able to engage students through the chat function. And then the other way I have used Zoom is to be able to record sessions like this, which I then in turn download for my YouTube channel and am able to share more widely. Including branding at the beginning and at the end with important information such as my website and social media links and any other relevant information that I want to give to people. And that's what I'm doing right now. So I did the live version earlier, but I decided to re-record and factor in some of the frequently asked questions that came up, not only during the live, but before and after the call as well. So what is Zoom? Zoom is essentially a web conferencing software which works in a way, in a similar way to Skype, but there are some features that I found more beneficial. I find it more stable than Skype, so it tends to crash less. I find the sound quality a lot better. And by the way, this video is no way sponsored by Zoom. These are just my personal experiences of using it, as I say, since 2017. So it's more stable, and the thing I like best about Zoom is the recording function that I've just mentioned. It's very simple to do. Recording starts as you begin, and as soon as the meeting has ended for everyone, the files convert to an MP3 for audio and an MP4 for video, which, as I said, you can then upload to your YouTube or social media or website or any other channels that you choose to. To set it up is very straightforward. Across the top there's a sign in or register function, and with that you can either sign up through Facebook or via Google, or use your own email address and create a password, much as most things work. Once you've set it up, you have three options in terms of the package. There's a free option, which is for personal meetings. Some very small businesses do use it for business purposes, and it is completely free, up to 40 minutes with 4 participants, or actually unlimited if you're doing one-to-one. So that's your option number one. The second option is Zoom Pro, which is $11.99. I'm not going to go into detail. All of this information is available on the Zoom website. But essentially, you can have over 100 delegates on there, and you can record, but there is only one host. So the next option is the business option, where you can have up to 10 hosts. So it might be 10 colleagues or some of your supply chain or other partners joining in. That's $15.99 a month, and you can have 300 participants. And then there's a large enterprise option, which if you're watching from a large corporate, that costs $15.99 a month as well, but you can have up to 50 hosts. And personally, I've never engaged more than a couple of hosts because it can be quite distracting for others watching. So that's the pricing side of it. For most people, the free option or the $11.99 option is more than adequate. There is an annual rate as well that brings the price down slightly. But with the $11.99 or the $15.99, you can cancel every month. So maybe just try the basic one while you're getting used to it and testing out the features. So what are some of the features then? If you're on Zoom, along the bottom you will notice various buttons, and I'm just going to talk about a few of those. So when you actually set up a Zoom call, which you can preset well in advance, There is a feature to mute participants by audio and by video, which is great when you're doing a webinar where you have content to deliver, and the only interruption that you might want is through chat, where you're able to take questions in your own time without interrupting the flow of your webinar. So the mute button is something you can do straight up, and there's a manage participants tab right in the middle of the bottom toolbar as well, where you can do that during your session. There have been some glitches with that. I've noticed that even though I've set up muting people on entry into the Zoom call, it hasn't actually worked. So you might need to keep an eye on that over the next few weeks. I think Zoom's been so popular since COVID-19 came about that lots more people are using it, and I think it's creating some bugs and, you know, maybe slowing things down a little bit, but I'm sure that will be resolved in time. Some of the other features that you have, which again is why I like it for its ease over some of the other options, is there's a share screen option. It looks like a briefcase with an arrow up. And what that means is you can share your screen. So for example, if you have a PowerPoint presentation, you can share those slides as you're talking live. Even in my one-to-one sessions or group sessions, when I'm face-to-face with a group of delegates, I don't use much in the way of PowerPoint anyway. I prefer that engagement, and I like to get people involved and asking questions. So that's generally not something that I would do personally. And since I'm talking about my own experiences, I'm not really an expert in doing that because it's not a feature that I particularly tend to use. Then I mentioned the chat option. That looks like a comment bubble. And in that chat option, people can post the questions or make comments. And as I said, you can take those as they arise. I actually asked a friend to help me moderate. So she took photographs, she took screenshots of all of the questions as they came up so that I could put them into this video or into a frequently asked questions sheet for after the webinar. The other options that you have are, there is a pause and stop recording. So for example, if you're using Zoom for, let's say, a board meeting and you have some reserved or confidential matters, at that point you could stop recording and resume at a point when it's appropriate to do so. Otherwise it will keep recording right until the end when you close down the meeting and it starts to convert. Another button on there is stop video. So that's on the left hand side alongside the mute function. And what that does is it doesn't stop the Zoom call from happening, taking place. It just simply stops the video. So if I were to press stop video now, it would record my audio, but it would stop me showing up on the screen essentially. What happens with the video function, if you have more than one person on there, the person who's speaking, Zoom has clever technology. So if I'm the one doing the talking, as I am now, I would be in the more prominent box. And if somebody else picks up that conversation, then they would go into that box. So the screen shifts to focus on the person that is making a point at the time. And then towards the very end at the right is the end meeting, which is the thing that closes the whole meeting down. So those are the key features really. There are some additional features. As you can see behind me, there is a lovely photo. It's a professional photo of me. I was featured in the Grant Thornton 100 Faces of a Vibrant Economy campaign. This was a photo that was featured in their exhibition, and it gives a professional backdrop along with the teal. The other thing I'd like to say about your backdrop is the lighting. I see many people fall into the mistake of either having a very dimly lit background so that they're not visible, or that they have the light behind them, which creates a halo effect, which is quite distracting to the viewer. The way you can overcome that is either to use your curtains. Let's say if you have nice curtains. I've seen a top online marketeer use her closet, and she has a lovely shower curtain which she pins up behind her. So you might order a nice backdrop, even branded if you like, with fabric behind you. And use a light or a lamp for some kind of uplighting so that you're getting the right amount of light in your video. Now, the other thing to say about Zoom's features is they do have an integrated background feature themselves. So if you're on the business version, you can have your own branding, so you can have your logo and maybe some of your social media links, or you can have a green screen. Personally, I don't like any of those, and I've not used their features because my style is very real. I like to come across as me and approachable, so I don't want any of that. And as I said earlier, I'm able to, if I put this onto YouTube, I can brand it up at the start and at the finish, and it doesn't look too much. So that's my personal preference, but you can explore all of those things yourself. Now coming on to content delivery and structure, whether it's something like this or my public speaking training or my media handling training, the key thing I focus on is structure. When you're delivering, you don't want to come across as stilted or reading from a script. What I'm saying right now is completely unscripted, but I do have several bullet points. So there were some things that I wanted to cover in this webinar, and I've given myself that structure so that I won't forget the points that I want to do. And they should be as simple as half a side of A4, some key bullet points on the things you want to share within your webinar. In terms of content, obviously people will be using that for different reasons, and you can use, as I said, the share screen function to show people what's on your screen. It might be images, or it might be a PowerPoint slide or something else. And then in terms of delivery, there were some important things to say here. So I've talked about the background, but dress is another thing. If you are using this for the first time working from home, a lot of people are joking about saying, is it okay to record in my pajamas? And I know people that do record with dressed on the top half and not on the bottom half. Personally, I don't do that because I like to feel put together. And who knows, if my doorbell rings or something happens and I need to stand up, you are going to see my PJs or my scruffy tracksuit bottoms and completely mismatched from the top half. So you'll notice that I don't have earrings on, I don't have a necklace on, and for the women, these can pose a real distraction. And if you're using a headset, then your earrings or your necklace can maybe bash against your headset. I do actually have a headset which I use for some calls where I want to improve the audio. My laptop is an HP Envy, so it has a Bang & Olufsen speaker. The sound quality is really good. But if I want to deliver commercial webinars, then I do use my headset that has an integrated mic. So anything that might bash against that is not ideal. So my style is I tend to wear a top that is pretty straight across, fairly neutral, so that people aren't looking too much at that. And also think about your hands. Even when I talk, I use my hands, so they're in the frame sometimes. Have a practice with that as well. Watch yourself back after you've recorded some of these, because again, it's about that optimum viewing experience for whoever's watching you, whether it is a one-to-one client or a group of people. And then think about your posture, because whether you're doing a talk or you're doing something like this in a recorded format, your breathing, so breathing really from the stomach and getting your voice out clearly is important, because what we're doing here essentially is a monologue. I'm speaking to the camera, and so it has to be dynamic. I have to vary my pitch and my tone. I have to give some pauses, and I have to introduce new elements, maybe elements of surprise or new bits of information that you might not have thought of. So we've covered content delivery and structure. The next thing to say is about your environment, so where you're in. We've covered background. You've seen my little alcove, which is my dedicated workspace. It doesn't echo too much, and I have no interruptions or background noise. And whether you're doing a conference call with work, especially when you're working with clients, you need to make sure that you can close the door or have a quiet area where dog's not barking, a child's not coming in. So for example, we also saw that expert who was being interviewed on a serious subject, and his little daughter sauntered in, and then his second child, the toddler, came in on the baby walker, and the poor mother thought she was out of sight of the camera, came in and tried to snatch them out, and all of that was captured. So even experts can make that kind of mistake. Don't let that be you. Try and give yourself as quiet a space as possible to record and get across or have these kind of conversations. Some of the questions that came up on my live earlier were related to the other apps that I use alongside Zoom. So I've talked about branding up my my talks and chopping and editing. Personally, I find editing quite boring. So I don't do that because, again, for me, I like it quite natural. But there are sometimes bits that I do need to edit, such as somebody dipping in with a question and it stops me for a split second. So I might want to chop that out. On a standard laptop like mine, I use Movie Maker. So if you've got if you've got a laptop, you might use Movie Maker. That's completely free of charge. And then if you have a Mac, then there is iMovie. Both operate in pretty much the same way. You upload your video and you splice, you can add images and you can add background noise. And so, for example, if I have an audio, if I have something that is just an audio recording, for example, I did a radio interview the other week, I was sent the audio, which I converted to MP3, and then I had to upload it into MP4 format. So the way I got around that was I used my own branding. So I have a cover image with my social media handles and things like that. And then I used Movie Maker to essentially fit the whole audio file, which was over 7 minutes, to one slide. So people were seeing a holding slide of me with the title of the talk and the date, and they could listen to the audio. With a video like this, you can add an image at the start or the finish, because once I've ended my recording, it will download as an MP4. So it will be quite straightforward for me to just go on and put those things in. And then with Movie Maker, on the drop downs to the right, you can save it as the relevant file format that you want. So whether it's a .wav format or an MP4, which is the most common one, and that's what I use, save it to your relevant folder or to your desktop, upload to YouTube or your website or social media channels in the usual way. And as I said, iMovie works in a similar way. I'm not the expert on that at all. I've never used it. So follow the instructions. A lot of people are giving free help and advice out there. One of the other questions I asked was about how I manage group sessions. So if I have a larger group, I had about 50 people or so on my call, and there were a few related questions around that, about how I manage the group sessions. And the way I do that is, as I said, by switching off audio and video and just allowing for group chat so that I can address those questions when I'm good and ready, as I would do in a face-to-face setting anyway. Somebody also asked me how we would capture the engagement, so how would we know who is on there. My live was completely open and free of charge. I didn't want to capture anybody's email addresses. I think that in this scenario could have been viewed quite cynically as a potential sales pitch, and I really just want to share my knowledge, the bits that I have, saying that I'm not an expert, but showing up in the right way for my community. So I didn't do that. If you are delivering a webinar and you want to capture people's contact details up front, and you let them know, because you have to bear in mind relevant data protection regulations such as GDPR here in the UK, what you would do is you might create a landing page or something up front where whoever subscribes and provides their email address will then be sent the Zoom link, or you can restrict it as a password protected thing. So again, you might know who is coming on. The other thing you can do with Zoom, when you do have someone's email address, so for example, I want to set up a few meetings well in advance with one of my coaching clients. We've pre-arranged the dates. What I can do is set those up within Zoom and then send them an email request through. It pops up so you can send a link to Outlook or Exchange or any other calendar formats in there. And so that will be sent through in the usual way, and they can just add the meeting to their calendar or ask for a reschedule of that meeting. There are some other apps that you can use, which I won't go into, but there are apps such as Calendly, which you can link Zoom to, where you allow people to book so they can see the slots that are available in your calendar. Use that, then they get a Zoom link and they're able to then set that in the calendar as well. Again, I have used it, it doesn't really work for me. I don't deal with that volume of calls anyway. My calls tend to be more relationship based, so they're either longer or it's one-off. So it depends again on your particular needs. And then the final thing that came up was just about what other help could people get with respect to Zoom. And what I said was there are a couple of options here. So Zoom right now, in response to the coronavirus, is offering free web tutorials and some live demos as well, which are great. They're a free resource, so you can go onto the website and just view those to familiarise yourself. And I would say, as I said, coming back to what I said at the start, practice yourself. I'm self-taught in this and lots of other apps. Take the risk away from yourself, maybe by not paying at first and testing it out on friends and family until you feel comfortable to deliver to colleagues or to clients. And especially if it's higher value clients, you want to make sure what you're offering looks professional and that you're not fiddling around with the app, because that can knock your confidence, it can make you flustered, and that again has an impact on how you are perceived with the people that are buying your services. So there is that. And then one other thing is, through the Inspiring Women Changemakers community, we have a couple of excellent members, Sean Conway from Ethical Hour and Annie Moon, who've collaborated on a group called Helping Social Entrepreneurs Take Their Business Digital. That's a free group for the time being on Facebook. Anyone can join. It is they will have to accept you into that, but both of them are real experts and they will take up the mantle. This was an introductory session. They will help guide people through, but you do use, I would again encourage you, go on to Zoom and the other apps you want to learn about and use their resources, because they have a big machine, big marketing machine behind them, where they have professionally put together videos where they're sharing screens and showing you the actual features. So do take advantage of everything that's out there at the moment. And I wish you all the best of luck in your journey. Bye.